All right, we're going to take a look at some Zhamalov attacks from his over-under position. This first one, I think, is probably in a perfect world. I don't see him get them to go to their back very often. But this little drop attack he's doing is very similar to Amuzad's. All right, so we see he has underhook on the far side, over top on this near side. All right, now he's going to swing out to the side and drop to get the person to fall into space. As he's doing this, he's twisting his elbow back toward his side to get the opponent to start to rotate this direction. So open their hips up and chest up a little bit. We can see their chest is facing away. And he's also looking to swing them around where there's few posts out here. All right. And here I think a couple reasons he gets the guy to go to his back. First is, again, no posts out here in this direction, so the opponent doesn't quite get his foot down. He does have a post on his hand, but in this spot, it's not going to stop him from going over to his back. The other thing I think is he gets his head trapped on his shoulder. So the opponent's head is kind of trapped on top of Zhamalov's shoulder. That way he can't slip his head or rotate or move his arms out in any direction. And here we see he does hit his knee on the mat, but his hips go outside it, right? Which is that twisting motion. And then once he's on his hip, it's just a simple drive through and to his back. All right, one last time. It's going to be a drop and swing motion from Zhamalov, and everything's going to rotate down in this direction, very similar to those Iranian whip throws. Gets the guy off balance and then drives him right over. Now, just like in those Iranian whip throws, this is still pretty safe. We see here he drops to try and throw and then just goes right again, right? So it doesn't put him in a ton of danger as long as when he drops, everything kind of leans forward, right? So we see his head leaning forward, his chest leaning down toward the mat. If he's more in a straight up chest position, he could get off balance backwards, but here he's pretty safe. And we see him just recover up and then go again right away. Now this one is what I see most often. He kind of loses this backside arm trap and ends up being a little more of like a throw by into a dogfight position. So we'll go through it again. Gets his hook in. All right, you see there's simple over under here. Now, hands locked. All right, on this first drop, we see him drop. And he doesn't get a ton of motion toward the outside of the opponent's body on this one, which I think is part of the reason the guy doesn't go over. The other part, we see he gets his knee out there as a post. We see his head get trapped similar to that first clip, but there's not enough drive here to get through this person's knee. And you can see where, if we were to draw a straight line up where this person's knee goes, their hip, which is likely somewhere right in here, is inside that line for their knee. So it's going to be really hard to get him to go over to their back there. And he recovers and goes right back to it right away. All right, so this time he swings a little bit further. We see the difference in distance and angle. All right, so he gets all the way outside the guy's foot this time and is almost facing the same direction as the opponent. All right, as he does this, we see his backside overhook slip off the opponent's arm, making it more of a throw-by motion. And then he just continues into a body lock for like a little simple dogfight finish. This clip, pretty similar finish to the last one. Gets to his underhook a little bit different, which we can take a look at. Ends up in a dogfight type position, really using that back knee to score. Right here he goes kind of super duck, or that swim motion that a lot of the Russians do, into the same throw by type motion, and then into this dogfight position to finish. All right, so we see him swim. He gets his lock right away over the top of arm. We can see he's underneath on the backside as the opponent swims their hand over. As they square up, he gets into his lock right away. And then, again, same kind of drop, pivot motion to the outside. And we can already see the kind of loss of down pressure on this guy's arm, on the opponent's arm, which makes it more of like a throw by. So here he kind of rotates up toward the head, ends up being a throw by type motion, again dropping his head and chest low so that he's not off balance backwards and in any kind of danger for something crazy to happen. And a lot of times I'll end up in this spot. Here I really like how Zhamalov uses his back knee to shift the opponent's weight forward the whole time, so it makes it a lot harder to get weight back into him. So you can see him keep pushing that knee up forward until he gets his underhook arm out and gets his score. All right, similar throw by motion here. We're going to see him attempt it and then jump back to the other side, like a quick go behind. And then he gets in the quad pod and breaks him down. And just a little arm bump. All right, so same type of motion. Gets his hands locked. Drop pivots to the outside. Again, doesn't get quite hip to hip on that drop. And then pivots off to the other side. All right. So we see him get over under. Gets his hands locked. Really likes his finger lock. It gives him a little more distance. Or length with his arms, as opposed to trying to lock on his wrist or a gable grip or something like that. Drops and pivots. And again, on the ones we've seen be a little more like throw by or a little more successful, he seems to have gotten closer to the guy's outside foot here. This one he's a little bit more in front. Still gets the guy to hit his knee pretty hard, but again, the angle here, knee gets to post, hip stays inside the knee. So he's able to kind of recover and not go to his back, right? But he's going to take this opportunity to quick jump back around with his lock. Am I a huge fan of this? I don't know. I think if he waits a second longer, the opponent's able to get, we can see the opponent reach his hand up. The opponent's able to get his arm in between, but since he does it fast enough, and the opponent has to recover his direction as well, it's a decent option, right? So one more time. Drop pivot, and then jump backside. Simple, kind of go behind for a secondary option when you miss. Here we're going to see another option out of this over-under. Opponent's kind of circling away from his underhook side. So he's going to step other leg through, kind of opposite direction, and look to headlock. Not the prettiest headlock ever, but ends up still scoring it. So right before he goes, we're going to see the opponent circle hard left. Steps through. Looks for the headlock again. Not the prettiest one ever. Still scores it. Right here, we see The opponents start to circle to the opposite side of Zhamalov over this direction. All right, this is going to give Zhamalov some space to step this foot all the way through and look to get his hips in for an effective headlock. Now, when he does this, his opposite arm, the overhook arm, is going to slide up toward the opponent's head to catch. This almost becomes a little more of a trip motion. You can see the opponent's weight shift from his upper body outside of his post foot. So we see he's really leaning. His foot's stuck in the mat, and the opponent's starting to lean outside of that post, which makes him off balance. And then as they hit the mat, Zhamalov just continues to drive and use his hips to lift the opponent's hips up. And run him over. Again, not the cleanest headlock, but it could be. And it could be really nice, right? So it's just another option. Again, when the opponent circles away from his normal drop side. Now, this one's a little bit different. He ends up on the opposite side for his over-under, but I still think it's something to look at if you want to wrestle in this over-under hands lock position. He gets to his over-under here off an attack. Shoots. Partner pulls him up and starts to get into his own over-under again. In the rest of the clips, we see this is his typical underhook side, but right now he's over. Right here, we're going to see kind of a step in to get his hips in. As his hips come in, he's going to bump, lift, and twist. Really similar to, man, I can't think of the guy's name, the dude who went to the Farrell, the Bill Farrell tournament and did a body lock to this type of motion. I want to say it's a front Uchimata maybe from judo type motion. Again, I'm not a judo person, but I feel like that's that type of motion. And then once he gets the opponent stood up tall, he panics and tries to go for a throw because he knows he's not in a good spot. And Zhamalov just collapses on top of him for either a counter for 2 or 4 or whatever they call here. But one more time. All right. In this, I think a lot of the time, this lifting hip twist motion. So steps in, hips in, gets opponent's feet off the mat. And then knee lift. A lot of times I think you'll be able to get the guy to go down right away. Really good balance by his opponent. Recovers that position. And then just panics, makes a mistake, follows him down.